Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. So, obviously, as you can see, I'm on the road again, and but I'm still here. It was discussed, by the way, Tom, of
Oh.
whether this was happening today. I saw it in the discussion as I was watching, waiting for you. And it was question of whether we'd ever missed a week, and the answer to that question is no. I've never missed a week.
Sure.
There have been twice that we did have to delay and do the show.
Like we
on
did like a Thursday.
Yeah. Just because it was literally impossible to do it anytime on Wednesday because of my travel schedule. But for the most part, that's it.
So we're going on 4 years of almost always doing a show on Wednesday.
Yes. I mean, like I said.
No, 5 years. But 4 years? We've done 4 Thanksgivings, so we're starting our 5th year. Yeah.
Correct. We'll be swinging into that anniversary. Yes. At any rate, hi, everyone. Welcome. So we're going to be talking tonight about the best armies that no one is playing. I'm excited about this. I'm talking in a normal tone of voice, by the way, loud, not as loud as I normally am, because I am sitting here in a hotel with not the thickest walls in the world. So, I don't want to scream and keep my neighbors awake. That's just rude. But before that, of course, we've got some news. Tom, what do we got, buddy?
Yeah, so we have a rumor engine. I guess I'm in charge of this now, right?
You're in charge of this now. Yes, that's the idea.
Cool. So let's share that then.
You should do that.
Going on 5 years, still don't know how to do this. Okay. Here we go. So Chaos Book, right? That's what this is?
Yeah.
With candles? Like Chaos Book with candles?
Yeah. Yeah, that's correct. Chaos Book with candles. Yes, the 8-pointed star is classically Chaos. That's right.
I'm going to suggest that we're looking at a new Dark Oath release. Like something's... Actually, you know what? I'm going to go one step farther. I'm going to be super aggressive with this call. Oops, sorry. I'm going to be super aggressive with this call. Not only Dark Oath, I'm going to say that this is a new Slaves to Darkness release, and this new Slaves to Darkness release will have Dark Oath in it. Bold call there.
So you think the starter box for Slaves to Darkness that they put out this Christmas was basically heralding the great Slaves to Darkness / Dark Oath that's coming? That's what. That's your call here.
I do, because we did this last year with the Nephrata Death box. There was a Battle Force that was released for Death. That was Nephrata and a bunch of skeletons and stuff like that. A Mortarch and a bunch of skeletons and whatnot. And it came like 2 months before our Death release. Our Legions of Nagash release. And so I'm going to suggest that weird out of left field Slaves to Darkness box is heralding a new Slaves to Darkness release. That's my call.
Okay. Now, does the fact that this book appears to be metal influence your thinking at all there?
No.
Okay. because it definitely appears to be metal, right? Like
yes,
the whole book
it does. Yep.
Okay, I'm going to make a different call. You ready?
Okay, hit me.
This is a Khorne thing. And the book is made of brass, right? Because Khorne likes brass. And this is
but they don't have spell books.
That doesn't mean that doesn't. You're telling me Khorne doesn't have any books?
No, Khorne does not read books. He reads
he's
skulls.
Brutish, but I'm sure that they could swing a book or two.
No, it's not happening.
I think I saw somebody mention earlier, like when they were talking about this, that their guess was it's like a Khorne demon composer for the band that we've put together of all the other demons. But I would also accept the Chaos Undivided composer as well.
Yes, I think Chaos Undivided composer is the right way to go.
Or conductor, sorry, not composer.
Yes.
Conductor, sorry.
Yes. For the Hellish Orchestra. No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, boy, do I hope so. That's what I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a Chaos Undivided, which, by the way, could be Dark Oath's Slaves of Darkness, right?
Sure. Yes, it could. Absolutely.
And as an aside, how amazing would it be if they rolled Everchosen into that thing as like a sub faction of Slaves of Darkness, like as a mini build out, like an optional thing like Tamerkin, but as a tack on to that and the other chaos stuff.
I would much prefer that, to be honest. I don't know that I want some complete like let me sort of break this down. I think that I would love to see new Dark Oath, but I don't know that I would love to see it as something separate from the Slaves to Darkness range, which is still one of the most enduring best ranges they have. Like, I'll stand behind Chaos Warriors and Chaos Knights and just aesthetically, right, as a range. And also as a thing. We'll talk about that later. But is there a reason we're looking at the Titan now, Tom? Because you can't remember you're sharing your screen, and so you switch focus.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Stop touching your keyboard. But like, so I don't want something completely new that doesn't work together. Like, if anything, I would want it to be Night Haunt Legions of Nagash style, right? Or something like that. Where, like, I can more freely integrate it with the greater Slaves to Darkness. Because I want to have, like, if they release a bunch of crazy, Dark Oath Barbarians, man, I better be able to put some Chaos Warriors and Chaos Knights in that same force and go to war. Like, come on. Otherwise, what are we even doing here?
Indeed. No, I agree. And man, like, how awesome of a very simple release would that be? And basically only update the barbarian range in there.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's all there is to it. Because it doesn't need a whole entire refresh. Right? It just needs, like, we just need that cool classic aspect, like we got with the Underworlds warband built out, right?
Yep.
So
and I could even see this being a new war shrine. Although I will say that with the current war shrine being in that starter box, I'm less inclined for this to be a war shrine.
It's not a new war shrine because that war shrine is in the box.
Right. No, and I agree with that. Like, that's the thing that moves me away from suggesting that this is a war shrine.
Yep. I'm fine with the existing war shrine. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. So it's a perfectly good model.
I don't like the mutants. That's why I put it on top of a Thunder Tusk.
I don't like the mutants either, but that's just it. So plenty of people do, but it's also super easy to just put the war shrine on top of anything else you want.
Sure.
Right. So, like, okay, cool. So there you go. Yeah, there you go. That's that thing.
So
lots of guesses. I agree. This is my favorite type of rumor engine. The one where, like, we clearly know what it is, but don't know what it is. You know what I mean?
Like, what it goes to. Yes.
Yeah. Like, I hate it when we just get, like, a curved piece of metal, and you're like, I don't even know, man. Like, what? It's a curved piece of metal, and, like, it could literally be anything. This is much more tantalizing because I'm like, okay, some kind of sweet chaos book, very gothic, So, yep.
Agreed completely. Okay. Let's do. Okay, I know how this works. So the next one is we also had this is outside our normal wheelhouse, but we're going to share some 40K stuff because it's just too sexy not to share.
Absolutely. Look, also, I feel like
in the band that's assembling.
In the band that's assembling, yeah, this guy. Oh, this guy. I mean, like, I'm not going to lie. I despise that 80s paint job. Okay. Like, I really do. That sort of, like, 80s cacophony of color, glam rock aesthetic holds zero interest to me. But take the paint job away from it. Okay?
You're going to buy this guy for the band that you're going to put together, aren't you?
Yes. Now, the model.
Diorama. Here's the diorama. This is the diorama. All of the band members.
All the band members. Yeah, exactly. Now, the model itself, I love to no end. Like, I think it looks freaking amazing. The dude with the bolter guitar. Like, this was always my favorite thing about Slaanesh. Chaos Marines was the weird obsession with sound and noise in the Guitar Marines. And so, like, again, coloration I'm not a fan of, but that's just literally a paint job. I get it. They're literally mimicking the original art, right? So this is the original Jess Goodwin design, like, piece of art / mini or whatever. And that's fine. I have no problem with them, mimicking that. That's cool. Not the way I would paint it, but who cares? I don't paint anything the exact way they paint stuff. So whatever, right? Like, this guy needs to go on top. Like, I hear you about the band, but at the same time, I really want to put this guy on a giant Slanesh war shrine, right? And make the doof wagon that's always wanted to be like, this is Fury Road waiting to happen, which I think a couple people in the comments mentioned, and I agree completely.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm just saying, as far as like a diorama goes, like, this stuff writes itself. And you could name the diorama the Cacophonic Choir.
It's pretty good. Yeah, I don't know what you do with a harp, a bagpipe, and like, Korn is the only one without a musician, so it's fine. But like, you'd have a harp, a bagpipe, the guitar player. Yeah, I mean, it's good.
Well, no, you said Korn, right?
Yeah, Korn doesn't have a musician.
What is Tzeentch again?
Doesn't Tzeentch have a musician? They have something.
I don't think they do.
That's fine. We'll grab a musician out of some unit. They have them.
Sure, you could do the horn blower from the Pink Horse. Like, the Pink Horse have the big, like, curly horn, like a super trumpet, or a super horn. I don't know how to say it. But you could also do something drumming. Like, you could do a drummer, I'm sure, for like out of some of the Bloodletter. Like, do a conversion.
I mean, so many of the units have musicians, right? So, like, it's not like it's hard to put this together. But yeah. Yep. Like, I love this dude. He's great. And I love models like this. And like somebody said, I hope this doesn't mean they're not going to make a unit. Who knows? I will say, I don't think this is the rumor engine, though. The one that we thought was this guy was a new News Marine. It's not. He doesn't have the same tubes. They don't go the same direction.
Right.
So, there you go. Still TBD on that one.
We also had the rumor engine from last week called out with the Gene Stealer cults.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, man.
Let me share that just for us real quick, just to put a pin on that. We suggest that you picked up on the lines and identified that it was a radar that we were looking at.
Yeah.
And sure enough, that's what it is. So here's the shot that we had. Here's the shot that we had. Here is the top of GW.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
So there's no question there. And Vince, you had pointed out these lines were like a radar array.
Yeah.
And sure enough, this is what we have. So there we go.
And I want to give a real credit to, there was someone on Twitter who I saw after our show who said they thought it was a Gene Stealer cults model. And because this did exist, there was like some metal model from the 80s that was called like the Gene Stealer, or late 80s, early 90s. It was super old. I don't remember when. It's outside my wheelhouse. But it was a very old, very simple, like, special edition metal model of this, of like a Gene Stealer dude looking at like a hollow display. And he's like, I think it's a new version of this. And he was exactly right. So I apologize. I don't remember who that was on Twitter, but shout out to them, man. That is a deep cut. And they called it.
You got to love it.
Yeah.
And then we finally got the images for the Karnak and the Harpist that we've been alluding to. Let me see. I had not found those because we got talking about that other one. Here we go.
Sure. No, I mean, that's fine. While you're bringing that up, I'll talk about this for a second, which is Karnak looks amazing. There he is. Yep. There's our doggo. He looks great. So much more dynamic than old Karnak.
He's ready to lead some bloodthirsters. That's what that looks like right there.
Absolutely. Like, that's so great.
General of the Apocalypse right there.
Of course. Yeah. And this is your general for now and all future Khorne armies. If you don't have Karnak as your general, what do you? Again, you've made wrong choices in your life, obviously, So very excited about that. I love this model. I think he looks fantastic. I love all the new dogs. As I said, I'm picking up one of these boxes. I've already put the call out that one of these better be set aside for me. And if anybody else is like, I probably need another Slaanesh half at least, I would say. But I'm keeping all the dogs. I don't know what I'll do with the rest of the bloodletters. Maybe I'll use them for classes or something. But
Do we know how many there are? Is it just 10?
I have no idea. They showed the back of the box. I don't remember exactly how many there were on there. So I don't know. But this dude is pimp. I love it. Great dog. And we don't get a lot of resculpts of old models, right? Like we just haven't had a lot of just straight resculpts. Not where it's like, go ahead.
I would say we did with Tzeentch, because we got not only the Lord of Change, but we got another Changeling resculpt.
I wouldn't count the Lord of Change. That's a complete redesign, right? Like with all the greater demons, I'm setting them aside because the greater demons were all an abomination and were like completely rebuilt from the ground up. This is still Karnak, right?
Yeah, okay.
He's still a three-headed dog. The Changeling, yeah. He's a good example where they just took the classic Changeling and remade him way better, right? Yep. Like the reality is we just don't since in the age of AOS we haven't gotten that many true resculpts where the model is still basically the same model, like that is to say in size and sort of function and stuff like that, but just completely updated aesthetic. And so I'm all about it. It's great.
Totally. And then also this girl.
Oh yeah, man. This girl is. This blew my mind, dude. Yeah, obviously this is the harp, as we knew, right?
Yeah.
And
but you didn't see that coming, did you?
I did not see that coming. Like I pictured the Herald harp player, and I pictured the harp from the thing. But this, the beauty of this mini, of it, like the harp being muscle and sinew stretched from this guy's back up to the hooks, is amazing.
I'll be honest, I saw this and I was like, am I looking at a Kingdom Death mini?
Sure. That base size is going to be annoying. She better do something more special than a normal Herald. She's going to be on like a 60 mil base. That's all I'm saying.
Is that a 60 mil or it looks like an oval? Like it looks like a 75.
I think it's a 60 by 35. It's the small cap base. I'm pretty sure. Just looking at when in the other pictures where you see her with the fiends, I'm pretty sure that's how big it is.
Sure.
But no, this is great. And then you have the Slaanesh symbol on his back. Obviously, the flip shot is this exposed, beaten raw flesh of the Slaanesh model. Yeah, I am excited as all get out for this one. I love the
Did this scream Leather Daddy? Did this scream Leather Daddy enough for you?
Sure, absolutely, yes, 100%. But I love the extreme asymmetry of the single horn and how like if you had her without the harp, that horn would look ridiculous.
Yes.
Okay, it wouldn't look balanced on the model. But because they needed something to balance the harp, and so they have her big ponytail / horn, and oh, it's wonderful. This single model was such a wonderful rebuke to all of the sort of commonly held wisdom about the direction of Slaanesh. I've never thought that was really where the world was going, but between the new fiends and this gorgeous, beautiful, just ungodly, wonderful sculpt. No, Slaanesh is back, baby, and it's exactly everything we always hoped for. This is what I want. This kind of combination of beauty and horror. It's fantastic. So, yep. I'm down with it. I definitely need more of these in my life. That's for sure.
I mean, I decided to leave this on longer just so that you could appreciate it. So
yeah.
That's something that it's right.
I mean, I've got another 10 minutes in the clip if you want. I can just go on about it, but we might lose the audience at some point.
I'm pretty sure we would. Other things. We have the New Year's Open Day that's coming January 5th. We have an additional preview seminar and a new painting competition, quote, whatever that means.
Whatever that means, yeah. So I wasn't aware they were going to do an open day on the 5th. That's pretty close after the New Year, like, holy Moses. It's literally that weekend, obviously.
Yep.
And so the trick with Golden Demon that we know is that they're cutting out all the small demons. Okay.
Yep.
So like it used to be that they'd have like the AOS open day and the 40K open day and the Horus Heresy weekender and so on and so forth. And all of those would have golden demons at them as well. Right. And hence like the recent 40K golden demon that just happened here last weekend or whatever. Yeah, last weekend. And there was a lot of great winners from that. Some of the models were beautiful. I was not surprised at all to see that Skelets that Jeff took his gold with his ridiculously good like Nurgle Fat Boy from the Rogue Trader box. He did an amazing job. Check that out if you're a fan of Nurgle. I was in awe of his work there. You know what I think about Nurgle.
Indeed.
But like, yes, they just have down like painting competition. It's not Golden Demon. So like, but it's very light on details. And so I'm entirely curious to know what the shape of this new thing is. This like not Golden Demon painting competition. What is it? What are the, like, they haven't given out a non-Golden Demon prize in years. What is this? So I'm fascinated. Now I'm also hopeful because the only two really on the calendar now will be the main one at Fest and the one in Europe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is, that's going to be a rough competition in May. And so, I'm going to have to really up the game for that one. But it also gives me hope that we could see one here in June. Because the June open day at the Citadel in Texas would be the most logical place for it, but they haven't formally said that. But they haven't formally announced the schedule for anything for Golden Demon next year. So who knows?
Yeah.
We'll see. But yeah, it'll be interesting to get a new reveal party here in January. So there'll be two reveal things basically in January there. One at the beginning of the month and then at LVO. I would imagine, I'm not looking for the 5th to be anything too huge. I think they'll save the big stuff for LVO, but we'll see. All right, what else we got?
That's
Besides
really
you staring at your screen.
That's really it.
Thoughtfully, pensively.
Yeah, I'm just trying to dig up any more rumors, and that's really it.
No, we had that revealed. It was mainly 40K based because it was the 40K weekend, right? But yeah, we got the box set. We know. We know the Wrath and Rapture is coming in December. It's going to be on pre-order real soon, so that's cool. Like, obviously, that's going to be happening here very quickly. So, and then the big box sets that we've been talking about, the Battle Forces, those do go on pre-order then here. What is that? Next weekend? Is that right?
No, this weekend. The first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you
go. They'll deliver on the 8th. They go up the first.
There you go.
Yep.
All right. So, Tom, what's your pick of the week, buddy? What would you like to share with everybody?
Man, there's just so much good stuff. I'm actually gonna to do a shout out to one of our close friend of the show, Stone Monk. He revealed the next stage of his project, his Drukarion, which is his elf, his converted KO force that's all like Druchii, so they're all elves. And he put a bunch of them up, and they are bonkers. And he did a bunch of rope twisted with wire, and stuff like that, kind of like I did with the web on my my spider stuff, and it looks like he just did such a great job. Let me see if I can pull up just one image. He has a bunch of these on his Twitter right now, but he is just knocking it out of the park. He's doing that orange and blue scheme, and for any of those that know the KO, like the KO Arcanaut company have like pistols and like weapons, and man, he's Stone Monk is doing Eric's doing a heck of a job. So I just want to give a shout out to him and his Twitter feed.
Absolutely. No, that's quite reasonable of a pick. My pick of the week. I loved Eric's thing, by the way. I think it was really great. I had seen the models he was working on because we were chatting before like on the one night I had before I left recently, and he showed me like the work in progress, and it was looking great. The amazing part isn't how great it looks. The amazing part is that he's actually doing it and painting it. I've been lambasting him for a year that he's never going to get it done. So good on him. My pick is going to be for something we mentioned last week that was going up, but I want to make sure everybody checks it out. And that is the Honest Wargamer site is now live. All the lists are there. You can up and down vote them. So there are the list rundowns, and there are the unit rundowns, and a whole bunch of great stuff.
Your Ironjawz are doing hot.
Oh, are they? I swear to you, I have not looked. I haven't had a chance. I mean,
I went and looked. Insane. I went and looked, and man, you are rocking it. You had like last time like 50 upvotes. You're at the top of the list. So it is truly the bestest.
The best Ironjawz, yeah.
Yep. So it was hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, that list served me well for like a year, right? So, I mean, that's pretty good. It always performed well for me. It has some hard counters. I talk about it in the list, in the rundown. You know, it's the Honest Wargamers, the site. I'll link it down below. But it's pretty great. LOV just mentioned that there are 3 Masters event weekends. That there's going to be some streaming in Australia. Yes, that is absolutely correct. I did forget about that. But yeah, that's going to be awesome. I should put the information for that down below so people can watch that stream this weekend.
A runner-up, by the way, is LLV and the Honest Wargamer. They produce some, like, basically a bidding, like, over-under list based on the matchups for round 1 of the Masters, the Australian Masters, like, based on what armies people are taking and the win ratios with each of those armies as to like who they think predicting on the first round, who's going to take first round in each of the matches. Sure. And that's, I believe, on LLV's Twitter. So that's a nice mention runner up there as well.
Nice. Well, and to answer a comment real quick, no, I really haven't looked. Like, I had access to the beta site before it went live where I uploaded my list and was talking to Rob about it. And, you know, I put it up there and I'm happy with it. And I read through it. I read through other people's lists before there was any votes at all, just because it was cool. But like, I have not been home since last Wednesday, other than like, I was home for like basically a night to sleep.
Yep.
And then I literally have had no time. I've not been at my hobby desk. It's been absolutely terrible. Now, that night I came back to sleep, I did manage to get like, you know, a base put together and primed. So, you know, I still got some hobby time in, but boy, it's been scant. And no, I don't take it the wrong way. Don't worry. I was just saying, like, it's, you know, as we transition here, I'll use this to jump into hobby time, which is to say, I'm still working on that same freaking Imperial Fist from last week because I just haven't had any time. Like, since last Wednesday's show, I've been home, I don't know, let's say 8 hours to be generous. Like, that's, so, you know, not exactly a lot of time. And then that was like time when you're supposed to be sleeping 8 hours. That's it. So there you go. I am home tomorrow, though, and very excited. I plan to finish stuff up. What about you, Tom? What are you working on? You're working on a giant building, it looks like.
Yes, I'm a building. So, yep. I am doing a bunch of, I want to get my Sector Imperialis, or whatever, I don't know, the city stuff. Like, I had a bunch of those buildings that I picked up, and I wanted to have them done for kind of my local kill team stuff, so that we're yeah, so we can make some progress. And I have like a bunch of these buildings, so yeah, it's coming along. I'm glad. I want to get them done so that I can then transition to my Acon painting. So
Oh, yeah, sure. It's about time, man. You gotta have you are you in the GT yet?
no, of course not. So I
That's all
probably
right. We'll hold out hope.
sure.
Holding on to hope, my friend. So, but at any rate, it's going to be time. Given the amount of time it takes you to paint anything, you should really slide into that soon.
Thanks.
You're playing a list that's probably like 80% painted, and it's still like I'm like, nah, you better start soon for this March event.
I have like 35 minis I need to paint, and only 10 of those are witches. So, yeah.
Well, there you go. There you go. So, people, you have that to look forward to. Won't that be exciting?
Yeah, there's only 10 more witches than I own.
It's true. You own a lot of witches, though, so there you go. All right. Well, good. I'm glad you're getting your terrain moved along. I know it's your happy place, so that's good.
It is cathartic for me to paint terrain. So
it is the opposite of that for me. It is frustrating, and I hate it. So there we go. All right, Tom. Let's transition into tonight's feature segment, which is the best list that people aren't playing. And by the way, when we say that people aren't playing, like obviously that's a bit of a BuzzFeedy hyperbolic title, right? Because I mean, people play all sorts of crazy lists throughout the world, and like that's not what we mean. What we mean is like being commonly played or isn't getting the attention it probably deserves or whatever, right?
Yep.
It isn't showing up as often as it could, or maybe it's an alternate take on an existing list. Like, we could talk about a Daughters of Cain list. Plenty of people are playing Daughters, right? But this could be a very different take on the army or something like that, right? So there's lots of. I think that in general, one of the things that happens is the sort of wisdom of the crowd.
Yeah.
What's that?
People get a myopic vision of what something is, and so they miss actually the rest of the combinations.
Yeah, exactly. Until someone comes in and tries something different, right?
Yeah.
Like an innovator type comes in and tries something different and does well with it, and then all of a sudden, like everybody realizes that's now a thing.
Yeah, it was the Council of Blood list. They came roaring in at Nova, and everybody's like, "That's not a thing," and suddenly it is.
Sure, or yeah, absolutely. Or when Order Draconis, right,
Yep.
being a prime example of this. And so I'll actually start. I want to have a quick discussion on Order Draconis because obviously it didn't do great at Crimbobo this last weekend.
Right.
And the interesting thing about Order Draconis, I think, is a couplefold. It's an interesting story on how little needs to shift for a list to go from like probably mediocre to viable.
Yeah.
Because what changed there was the access to the realm artifacts, right? Mm-hmm. So like literally the access to, let's call it 1 or 2 additional artifacts. LLV, as the LLV pointed out, the person didn't make day 2. Yeah, that'll hurt you. But at any rate, those 2 artifacts change the entire nature of the list, right?
Do you want to highlight what the artifacts are?
Well, it's the trick here is, the basic trick here is you get all 3 of your dragons to fight first, right? To fight without threat of like reprisal or whatever, yeah. And there's a couple of different builds, but usually it's Quicksilver or whatever that version of it is, the Quicksilver potion type thing, or you can see some doppelganger cloak action or whatever.
Yep.
But the idea of the thing was it just took that little shift to push it over. Like for the most part, there wasn't that much of big other changes, right? I'm not going to say there was nothing, but it's a very scaled down, simple thing that just needed this tiny nudge, right? But that nudge, even though it reads small on paper, ended up being pretty big. So yeah. LLV pointed out that there was a 56-player event in Sweden where Draconis went 4-1. So there you go.
And Phoenix Temple 4-1.
Well, I mean, which I don't know if you're going to touch on tonight or not. But, the Order Draconis, I think, is a well-known property. I think if people aren't playing it, it's funny because I thought about it because I have, like, a ton of dragons. And I actually have, like, 20 old-school metal nice. And like 10 new plastics.
Yeah.
Of the
those plastics, by the way, are some of my favorite knights in the world.
They're really good. Yeah, I mean, I have the High Elf army from like the 90s, right? Yeah. And I've got like 20 of those knights, and then I have a bunch of the new plastics that came out of whatever box set that stuff all came out of.
2011. Or 5. Yeah. Anyways,
I thought about doing an Order Draconis as a like. Another paint in a week army challenge. Yeah, sometime. I thought that'd be fun because it's kind of, it's a very straightforward thing. 3 dragons and a bunch of knights kind of situation. So
sure. Knights.
Absolutely.
No, indeed. I mean, what I'll say is this, like, as in general, I think right now, I will go out there and say, I think all of the high elf forces, like what were traditionally high elves, sit in this category.
Okay. So you're counting like Phoenix Temple in there too, and then your dark horse here is Swifthawk, right?
Well, yeah. No, like I don't want to push too much on Swifthawk. There are some sneaky deaky stuff that I don't want to spoil on Swifthawk, but it is a very viable competitive list right now, is what I would say.
Tom, the point of this show is for us to spoil stuff. You've been beating around the bush of this Swifthawk thing forever. You're never gonna play it.
No, but somebody else is, and I don't want to spoil it for a large event, so I'm not going to do that. Okay. I'm going to let them come out with it first, and then once they smash an event with it, then we'll talk about it. But what I'll say is that right now all the high elves are very aggressively costed. The weak link here being the arcane, the arcane bad guys, not good. Well, the Swordmasters, because I think the Swordmasters still overcosted a little bit. But between the Lion Rangers, the Phoenix Temple, and Order Draconis, elves are priced really aggressively right now. And there's some really just there's some whether it's a mixed order elf list or whether we're talking about like the single lists like Phoenix Temple or the like. I think that there's some gas in those engines. And by the way, you don't like in the stats for LLV, like if somebody were running like mixed elves, you wouldn't see that because it would just be mixed order.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges of like I agree. That's an interesting thing. I was going to talk about it actually in terms of later when I come to Skaven, because obviously rats are going to show up, right? And I do think there's a lot of gas in the high elf tank. But yes, sometimes if you go broad with these things and you don't declare an individual allegiance, right? Then yeah, you'll end up getting lumped into like the generic order or generic chaos or whatever, right? And that's actually I don't know how he would tackle that. That's really rough because it gets reported as generic chaos, right? It's not his job to try to unpack that. Right. But it is unfortunate because I mean, once we have like eventually, like with the Honest Wargamer site and the lists, we'll be able to unpack it, right? And actually go and figure it out. But like as it stands right now, it can be very tough because you can have these actually very unique, different lists hidden under the generic.
It's like my mixed order dwarf list. Like it's a dwarf, it's a mixed order list, but it's not like other mixed order lists. Yeah,
exactly. So, whatever. But that's okay. We'll tackle that. That just means that you're not going to necessarily see it in the stats. That doesn't necessarily mean it's not there. Right.
But as LLV said, he hasn't actually seen any mixed elf lists. Like that hasn't shown up in any events for the mixed order. Like it's always just like truly like order soup rather than like elves. Like or a pure or a pure version of it, right? Like a pure Phoenix Temple, basically, or a pure
Order Draconis or whatever.
Which, let me just say, like Pure Phoenix Temple, like even that has tons of gas for obvious reasons.
Because Phoenixes are undercosted and Phoenix Guard are darn near unshiftable.
Yeah, and they're 30 for 360s aggressive. I'll say that.
Sure. For your 4-up guys.
Yes.
That are also pretty decent fighters.
2-inch reach, 2 attacks, 3s and 3s.
It's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, all 30 are into the combat because they're fighting 3 ranks deep.
They're on 25 mils.
Yeah, they are 2-inch reach, 25 mil, baby.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I would like to see, like, there's a lot of calls for the elves to be recombined, and I don't know, maybe not. I don't really care. I don't like high elves, so it's no skin off my nose. For all you pointy ears out there, but I do agree that, like, you know, if I was going to see that, sure, make that Armies of Aesir book. That's cool.
If I wasn't so locked in on Daughters before the GHB came out, I would have seriously considered as my force this year doing a elf version of what I did with my KO last year. Of doing like an elf mono elf mixed order, just because it's I have the models and it's competitive. Like the numbers are there.
Sure. You know, I mean, with a lot of these forces, some of them are going to lack some stuff, and what I think when you look at like the when you look at the dragons, when you look at Order Draconis, when you look at Phoenix Temple, they do have a lot of good capabilities. They have good anvils. They have good damage. In cases, I'm lumping this all sort of together generically. Not there's different weights to all this. But like, I think they are missing. They have some fast moving stuff, but I think they're largely missing. I don't know. Let's call it movement shenanigans. Is that a fair statement? Right? Like,
in general, are missing movement shenanigans.
Yes,
I would agree.
Not now. They're fast enough. That's not my point. Like that. I don't just mean like.
You're talking about teleporting, like picking up units and putting them back down.
Sure. Or being able to ambush, or lightning strike, or blah 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 blah. Right. Or redeploy at the start of the game. That's a great movement shenanigan that's highly underrated. Right. Like or Vanguard move style. Right.
Yep. I mean, yes, they have some of that, but I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So like they don't.
Shadow Warriors have a Vanguard move at the start of the game.
Okay. Sure.
You want to pay
man.
200 points for 10 wounds?
That's exactly why I said sure, Tom. Because that's, you know, not a thing. Yeah, I mean, if you were going to do that, you would just, if you were already going generic order, thank you to my wife for making me incredibly self-conscious, by the way. If you were going to go generic order, why would you not just have Canary? Right?
Sure.
Like, I mean, Canary are your movement shenanigan unit.
Right.
As I've pointed out to other people who've said, you know, talked about Canary, like we had a conversation like this recently. Canary could literally have a stat line that just said NA, like on their attack profile, and I would still pay 80 points for them. Right? Like, that's their use.
You could do like the Wayfarer pipes, like if you want to bring in Sylvaneth.
The Sylvaneth dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah, once you expand it to generic order, you suddenly have a lot of options, but that's my point, right?
Right.
If we're talking about the limited just Order Draconis or just Phoenix Temple, where you're staying in there and have to heed their allies lists.
Right.
Right.
Is Ideneth only Dark Elves for allies? The Dark Elves and Sylvaneth, is that in Wanderers? High Elves don't get them.
I don't remember. I do not remember where Ideneth occur. I don't have the allies lists for every elf memorized. Again, I hate them. So
sure.
You know,
they're primarily Dark Elves, but yeah. Because I was gonna say you could teleport in. Yeah.
All right. So we'll swing back to elves. I think both these things are kind of known quantities. Like we've spent a while talking about them.
Yep.
People are playing them.
Yes.
Right. Like these actually show up. These do pretty well, especially when well piloted. So I don't think that it's like no one is playing them or something like
Sure.
that. But we can go deeper. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's go back and forth here. Let's pick some stuff and talk it through.
Yep.
So what's your first, second or whatever? What's your hot pick? Hot take time. This is the show of hot takes. Hot takes. What do you got?
I'm going to make some people really uncomfortable here.
I don't want to know where this is going, but okay.
Including myself.
All right.
I'm going to say Kharadron Overlords.
I knew it. I was going to push you into this if you didn't bring it up. Yep. Here's what I love about this. I knew this was going to be what you said. And here's what I love about this, Tom. I've talked before about how Tom's anger swings on a pendulum. And you will get so behind something and then swing to the other side and hate it like you hate the fires of hell. And then you will swing right back. And I've been waiting for this turn. And I've seen it building because you've shared some lists with me. Right? And I agree with you is the thing. Now, one of the interesting things about LLV's stats is that he's starting to get enough compiled data that he can start regionalizing the data and it still retains some of its data integrity, right?
Yep.
And if you look at KO outside the UK, they've showed up a couple times in some top 3s or top 10s. Nothing exceptional, certainly.
Right.
But the reality is, as shooting swings back into the meta as a very useful thing, as the need to clear chaff and pick off critical heroes continues to expand in value, when you look at armies like the Beasts of Chaos, like the Daughters of Cain, like Legions of Nagash, where acing particular heroes is incredibly important, right? You can't shut down Legions of Nagash without killing their general, so they can't bring units back, right? You can't stop the Daughters without whacking the Hag Queen, right? And as these things become true and become sort of realized, and as chaff starts to build up where you can't melee them off the table because people are starting to really understand the value of chaff and build accordingly, you get rid of chaff by shooting chaff before you charge, right? And so as this has happened, KO have gone up in value, bottom line.
Yeah, and even I built a competitive list with Brock the other day.
Yeah, you did. You put Brock in a list and you know it. And here's what's fun about that, Tom. I don't disagree with you that it's competitive. I think it's a really interesting list. I can't wait to see you play it. And I think what's good about this one this time is you're on the right side of the swing.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Because everybody thinks they're terrible?
No, well, yes, certainly that's true. But also because I think in the next GHB, they're actually going to get a positive adjustment. Okay, right. Beyond just the silly, useless boats get marginally cheaper change that happened last time, right? Yeah. I think they'll actually get some key critical units will actually go down in price a little bit. Not greatly. I'm not saying you're going to suddenly have another 200 points, but it wouldn't surprise me if you suddenly had an extra 40 to 60 or something, right?
Which would make a big difference in a list like that. I will say that. Man, that would make a difference. But I have a KO list that I think is very playable. And actually has some hard, it's a hard counter to stuff like Daughters and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I think KO has meat on it, actually, competitively. And so much so that in talking, I shared some stuff with Gary Percival, and he considered rebuying the army in our conversation.
Well, he took his.
He sold his KO. But he's like, I want to retain it anyways. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
I asked him if that came with a bunch of second place awards when he sold it.
People have asked you to share the list, Tom. Are you going to share? You know what you need to do? You need to put that list up on the Honest Wargamer and let people vote. That's the answer.
Yeah. I'll put it up. That's fine.
Okay. There we go.
I was thinking about surprising Akon with it, because then I wouldn't really have to paint anything, and I like the idea of not painting anything.
Sure.
And just doing fun projects rather than army projects. But yeah, I'll think about sharing it.
There you go. You should. I mean, you can't keep everything secret, Tom. For God's sakes, we're on a show here, buddy.
I know.
And besides, it doesn't matter. I think the list will work regardless of whether somebody will see it coming. So yeah. There you go.
Viewers have expectations, demands.
Yeah, you can't. You can keep your one secret project. Don't keep 5. All right. So when I don't share things, it's because I'm under a contractual NDA not to share something or something like that. You know,
sure.
I think that's a bit different. Anyway, no, I agree. I'm glad you mentioned KO. I'm glad we got it out of the list. So yes, or out of the way. Okay, so I want to move to my hot take. Here's my number 1. You ready? And that's Skaven. Unsurprisingly, I want to talk about rats, yo. Let's talk about rats, yo. Okay, so if you look at LLV's listings, there are like 14 3-win clan Skyer lists or something like that. Okay, it's an extremely high percentage occurrence of 3 wins. All right, now 3 wins is a long way off of a winning tournament, right? Okay. And I submit to you the reason for that is because they're in Clan Skyer, right? Because I think Clan Skyer is the weak sauce build of the army. A lot of people go for the Goutfire, they go for the ambush, they go for that alpha, you go all in, and let me tell you what that gets you. That gets you the big L. Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I generally am highly opposed to alpha strike strategies. They sometimes win games, but rarely win tournaments. It's not impossible. It has happened. But it's not your go-to. Right? The mixed chaos Skaven, and LLV just said that a high percent of the mixed chaos wins are Skaven, which doesn't surprise me. Because the much, much better build of Skaven, in my mind, is actually mixed Skaven. Mixed Skaven have every advantage. What do you want? You want bodies? They put 40 bodies on the board for 200 points, right? Decent bodies, too. Bodies that can retreat and charge.
Yep.
Right? They have some of the best heroes in the game as far as like value per point. Okay. When you look at like the Grey Seer, who's 100-point re-rolling caster with a command ability, right?
Yeah.
You look at the Arch Warlock, who's a 140-point double caster in power armor, right?
Yep.
The Warlord who can fight and drop out of combat and has the +1 attack. That's obviously a very powerful thing when put in many things. And then there's other like sort of, there's obviously the Vermin Lord Deceiver, Mr. 6-inch teleport, spellcast on a 3. Night Runners, MVPs of the army, are rarely talked about, but they have the Vanguard move and can just stretch out like nobody's business and zone your enemy out of alpha striking you. And they're cheap as dirt. They're like 60 for 10 or something, right? 60 or 70 for 10. I don't remember off the top of my head. They're very, very cheap. They're right in where you'd want them to be costed for chaff, right?
Yep.
For vanguarding chaff that also has a ranged attack if you need it, right? If no one kills them. And you have a ton of good shooting, a ton of good mortal wounds. You can do high damage. You have movement shenanigans falling out of the everywhere, just everywhere. I mean, my God, the ability to movement shenanigan in this army is off the charts.
Right. In a minute.
Yes. And there are plenty of, now they have weaknesses, you're playing it under mixed chaos. You don't have any good battalions once you go to general chaos, so you're basically limited to one artifact and stuff like that. I'm not trying to be on here selling you that they're like the greatest army ever, right?
Sure.
But what I'm saying is that they, in the raw, have most of the tools. In fact, I would say all of the basic army tools you need to win, right?
Yeah.
Which is damage, mobility, survivability, bodies.
Power projection, bodies. Yeah.
Power projection. Yeah, exactly. Now, they lack the polish that pushes an army up to the absolute best, right? Which is like
the
having good battalions,
or
other bonus spells, stuff like that. Now, at the same time, the realms can help with that. If you're in the realms, you often have access to additional spells or command abilities or stuff like that. By the way, not that you need it. You have incredible command abilities in Skaven. Incredible. Like, it is some of the best command abilities in the game sit in the Skaven army. I would also point out you have very strong counters to a lot of things in the meta right now. You have some pretty decent, pretty accurate shooting.
Some of the best horde shooting in the game with the Globadiers.
Yep. Sure. Absolutely. Just dropping those dudes in there, who are also chaff, by the way, who can just chaff or run around the side or do 100 things. The poison wind mortars are like incredible horde breakers. The warp lightning cannon, if used properly, can be an incredible hero sniping tool. The Jezzails can mortal wound enemy heroes right off the board, although they're very bad if the hero is benefiting from the -1, so you have to be like very careful. That's why I lowly rate Jezzails right now. I don't like them because they are very inaccurate right now. But they're okay. They're not terrible. And then obviously you've got warp fire throwers galore and stuff like that. So you have just lots and lots of interesting shooting potential. Also, I would point out that something really, really marvelous that's horribly underused is the Vermin Lord Warbringer.
Sure.
Okay. Sure. Who has a Death Frenzy ability he can throw on troops, which makes them incredibly painful to things like Witch Elves and stuff like that, because it makes it so the unit always gets to pile in and fight. It basically gives them the Khorne Blood Warrior ability, right?
Yep.
So even if like Witch Elves come up and smash through your cheap chaff unit, you still get to fight back, right? So with proper
they don't have the extra bodies,
right?
Like the key there is that they don't have the extra bodies to lose like you do,
right? Exactly. And there's so many ways to make your rats just battle shock immune or resistant, right? So again, like not that witches will have a problem blowing up 40 clan rats or whatever, but still. And then we haven't even touched on the plague stuff, right? Like, I don't like all Clan Pestilence for the same reason I think Clan Skyer is bad. I think going in on one of the clans is a mistake, period, because you sacrifice all the rest of your tools. And skew armies don't really tend to win. They don't tend to 5-game. I'm not going to say they never do. They sometimes do. But they don't tend to. And that's because you will hit your counter 1 or 2 games in a tournament and lose. It's that easy. And so when you go into that skew list territory, you just, you're going to get countered. Whereas generic Skaven built properly under the Chaos banner can have every answer you need for all the armies currently in the meta, right? Yeah. To at least give a good fight. I'm not going to say like, I'm not going to say you're perfect, but I'll say you have the stuff you need to give a good fight. I really believe you would very easily build a list that would give you 5 competitive games, right? So there you go. All right, that's my hot take. Skaven boys, get them rats back on the table and experiment with all the different units that isn't basically crap. Like there are traps in this army. The rattling gun is a trap. The most of the other Vermin Lords we haven't mentioned are a trap. Other than by the way, I didn't mention what is he? The Warp Gnaw Deceiver is awesome because he's the guy who can bring a whole unit in.
Yep.
And then the other one, the other Vermin Lord whose name I don't remember.
Treach.
Yeah, the one who can summon like 2d6 giant rats. That dude is also amazing.
Yes.
But the other, like, I don't rate the Corruptor. I think the Corruptor is garbage. I just think he's made of paper and hits for like a feather and doesn't do anything. You know, somebody had mentioned giving him the Sword of Japan, but I have too many other priorities with my magic items in this army.
Right.
So yeah, there you go. Like, there are traps, but avoid them. A Hell Pit Abomination is utter garbage. I wish the Doom Wheel was good, but it's not. Things like that. Rat Ogres are probably bad. That kind of stuff. I wish they weren't, but they're probably bad. Oh, somebody asked about Storm Vermin. I think Storm Vermin are amazing, but you have to use them very carefully. They will kill anything, but they will also die to many things. So you have to be very careful with how you use your Storm Vermin. But I think they are an ungodly powerful tool when used properly, because they are really good for what they do. They're on 25 mil bases with a heck of a reach, and basically they'll be on 3s and 3s. Neg 1 and 1 damage, and they're solid.
Remember that Phoenix Temple conversation I just had?
Right. The difference is
2-inch reach, yep.
Yeah, yes, obviously. Like, offensively, they have at least as or more than the Phoenix Temple, right? Because they have built-in rend, and they have you can very easily get them up to like 3 or 4 attacks. The downside, and they're on 25 mils with a long reach. The downside to them is that you're on like a 5-up save, and that's the deal, right? And that's it. So you will just get plastered by anything that comes into you. So you have to make sure you're chaffed properly. Fortunately, as I mentioned, you should have, like, any good Skaven army should start with 80 clan rats. Period. End of story. That's your opening. You should start with 400 points in 80 clan rats, and then figure out what the rest of your army is. Okay, that's like moment one. You have 80% of your army to build in every Skaven list, because the other 20% is clan rat bodies. There you go. Okay,
that's a bold.
What's your next hot take? I literally can't imagine building the army any other way. I've always had 80 clan rats in my list, and they've always done amazing. They are MVP nearly every game.
I won't disagree with that. So I'm gonna go with Night Haunt. But here's the contentious part. I'm gonna go with non-Grimghast Reaper Night Haunt.
Oh, okay. So which is fine. Like we said, we can pick armies that get played, but different lists. So Are you going for like the Mirmorn Banshee list here, or what's your angle?
Nope. It's the Death Riders list.
I love this. I'm glad you're sharing this one. I love the Death Riders list. Because I think this really is a list not getting played. So please go ahead, walk people through this one.
So, and I don't mind sharing what this is. So the Death Riders list is, the core of it is a couple units of Hex Race, followed by a Black Coach, and then 1 to 2 of the Kharadron, like the teleporty heroes, the 5-wound teleporty heroes, that a lot of people feel don't have a use in the army. And I've actually come to realize that I think they actually make the perfect general for the army. Like, the perfect general for the army. So the
Dreadblade Kharadron or whatever, right?
Yeah, the Dreadblade Harrow.
There you go.
The Kharadron is a different unit. So the key combination of abilities here is the fact that the Dreadblade Harrow, in the movement phase, instead of moving, you can just pick him up and redeploy him anywhere on the board 9 inches away from the enemy. Like always, just pick him up and move him around. So this combines with the Allegiance specific Night Haunt ability that for a command point, your general. So instead of being able to like bring a unit back out of a graveyard, which is what Legions of Nagash get, the version that Night Haunt get is that they can pick any unit on the board, pick up the entire unit, and redeploy that unit within 12 inches of the general. And that means for 1 command point every turn, you can pick up an entire unit anywhere on the board, even if it's engaged in melee, pull it out of combat, and put it anywhere else on the board near your general you've just moved, because you can pick him up and move him every movement phase. And so what this allows then is so the next thing you need to make the magic work is command point generation. And as fortune would have it, Night Haunt has that. In fact, it has it in spades, both with the ability to steal because of the named hero Kurdos, and because there are items even in the generic realm items that can help generate command points.
Sure.
And so I think there's some variants of this list, but in the one that I also have Reichnor in there to cast Cogs.
Yep.
Which means that my Death Rider, so like he casts Cogs on a 4 since he can give himself +3. Which means that the Death Riders can basically, like, I can keep pulling them out of combat and redeploying the Hex Wraiths and or the Black Coach. And it's charging on 6s on the redeployment, and any roll of 9 or higher gives the double
of the battalion.
Right.
Yes. Because of the battalion. Because the battalion, basically, it moves your double pile-in from 10s to 9s. Like, actually legitimately moves it in addition to giving you the bonus to charge. And then the cogs are giving you another 2. So you're, like, redeploying and then recharging and hitting that number on a 6.
Right. So you're hitting your charge on a 6. You're hitting the free pile-in on a 9. Right. And they have a lot of attacks. And all of your model, like, restoration for the army is actually models, not wounds. And so, like, the general's command ability and the Black Coach and all that are restoring models to units. And so, on mine, I'm running with blocks of 10 Hex Wraiths, which are like 20 wounds on a 4-up save. So basically they have the defensive capability of those Grimghasts. Only they get when they get restored to units, they're restoring 2 wounds per restoration instead of 1. Because it's restoring entire models. So,
well, the cogs also helps you with your ride over ability on your Hex Wraiths as well.
It does.
Right?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of really interesting movement shenanigans, and so, like, in that world, like, you can be anywhere you want to be, engaging in any fight you want to be every turn.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and say that, Tom, this is another list you should absolutely put up on the Honest Wargamer. Like, look, Tom, on our little logo, you're holding a 2,000-point list for a reason. So it's time for you to put your money where your mouth is, buddy. There's now an official site for the collection of lists, and you're always this person who's like, well, I did that list first. I thought, I had a version of that. And you know what? Now we can prove that, because you can go put these lists on the Honest Wargamer, and they'll be date stamped, right?
Yeah,
so like
it takes time to do those write-ups.
It does, but if you want the credit, you got to do the work, buddy.
Indeed.
So that's all I'm saying. So let's all pester Tom until he gets this up on the Honest Wargamer. There you go. No, I agree with you. I think this list has super gas in the tank. And what I love about it is that it's completely perpendicular to the way Nighthaunt gets played right now. Right? Because right now, Nighthaunt gets played largely like Legions of Nagash get played. Not the least of which because it's usually being played in a Legions of Nagash list.
Sure.
But like, I love that this works so differently. Right? And that it would have this, just like, people would not know what to do with this. I also love the way this list interacts with a chaff-heavy meta, right? Yep. And with Hex Wraiths just easily plowing right over the top of them and mortal wounding them.
And you don't even need, like, here's a funny story. You don't even need to, like, hit the chaff walls.
Right.
They can't screen the backs of their units.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Unless everything is, like, completely circularly bubble wrapped, which seems, unlikely, right? Sure. Like, that's not how chaff walls work, beyond maybe, like, if somebody's hypersensitive turn 1, right?
Sure.
Yep. So, yeah, I think it's a really solid list that has some real potential. I dig it, man. That's a hot choice. I like that one. All right. So, my... next, so one thing let me touch on a couple things I'm not going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about anything Slaanesh related or MoonClan related. Okay, and the reason for that is because a book is coming for both of those things in like the next 2 months, and I don't, that's just going to change everything, right? So, yeah, do I think Slaanesh is really good? Yes. But who cares? In like a month and a half, you'll have a book and it'll completely change everything about it. So there you go. Do I think triple piling?
Changing.
The world is changing. Do I think triple pile-in exalted keepers of secrets are freaking amazing? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. But I don't know if that's even going to be a thing in a month and a half. So there you go. Okay. So instead, I want to talk about some Slaves to Darkness, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hit me. So you don't think a book's going to come out in 2-3 months? Slave to Darkness.
I don't know. Since we don't know, like this one's more amorphous. We don't even really know if we're getting a Dark Oath book or something like that. I want to praise people, or what I want to praise here is people expanding more into the Slaves to Darkness stuff within marked armies. I think that there are units within Slaves to Darkness that are tragically underused that can be used in any of the demon armies, right? Or demon, you know what I mean? Like named demon armies, Khorne, Slaanesh, Nurgle, whatever, right? And I think people just don't dip into this resource as much as they could or should.
Yeah.
Because I think like Chaos Knights right now are one of the better units around. The fact that they can be marked to like anything, so they can show up in anybody's list. The fact that they're 15 wounds on a darn decent save that could become an outright amazing save, depending on what god you're under and what other synergies you have, for 160 points with a really strong movement that are actually pretty decently offensive on the charge and can become incredibly offensive on the charge, again, depending on the synergies. I do not understand how these guys don't show up more. I think maybe people expect them to do something else, but like I think if you start thinking about them like slightly more offensive pigs with a built-in mortal wound save, right?
Yep.
Like they're pigs that aren't susceptible to getting mortal wounded off the table as susceptible, right? They're an incredibly good mobile anvil that can occasionally kill stuff if you pick your fights right. I think
or if you're a Nurgle and Blades of Putrefication's on the table, they can actually murder things.
Sure, absolutely. Look, all of the gods have something that they can do, more or less, to actually make them quite offensive. Okay. So, with the exception of maybe like Tzeentch right now, since they lost Fatesworn, I don't think Tzeentch has a way to turn Chaos Knight's offense on. But everybody else does, right? Because Khorne can just juice their attacks to like 8 million, right? Slaanesh can make them sort of like ultra far running and charging, double piling in monstrosities, where they're just zipping across the board like 20 inches easy without breaking a sweat, right? And hitting into people twice. And Nurgle can blades or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So it really is just Tzeentches are just a tar pit. That's all they are. They're just a mobile tar pit, because all their synergies have to do with like re-rolling saves, right? So, which is fine. It's not that that's a bad thing. It's just use them how they're meant to be used. I still think Chaos Warriors are pound for pound one of the greatest tar pits in the game.
I agree.
At a ridiculous 60 wound unit, that what I mean. There's just so many dumb things that can happen with this unit. Again, same thing. They're on a good save. They're multi-wound models. They have built-in mortal wound protection. Like 30 of them on a point is, with even moderate support, is just darn near unshiftable. Right? Now, is it completely unshiftable? No, but it's pretty good, right?
I mean, they'll bounce a Witch Elf block.
It depends on what the Witch Elf block has, but sure, a relatively low buffed Witch Elf block, sure. A fully buffed Witch Elf block, I don't know, man. I think that they're still going to get shredded. But again, like now we're into synergy comparisons there, right? If we're just talking like a raw 30-on-30 fight unbuffed, yeah, sure, I'm going to give it to the Chaos Warriors, right? They'll endure it. just on numbers, because the Witch Elves don't have, like, unbuffed, the Witch Elves just don't have the rend of the meat to cut through their save and their wounds, right?
Right.
An unbuffed block of 30 Witch Elves doesn't do 60 damage in a turn to a 4-up save. That's not the math. But, I mean, Witch Elves don't exist unbuffed. So I don't know what we're talking about right now.
Sure.
But yeah, just like and then there's plenty of incredible heroes hiding in here too, right? When you look at things like the Chaos Sorcerer Lord, who's amazing. The Chaos Lord on Manticore has a ridiculous mortal wound bouncing trick on the weapon loadout that no one ever takes, where he can be like bouncing mortal wounds back on a 4+ or whatever.
You're not talking about the sorcerer. You're talking about the Dreadlord, the
fighter. Actual Chaos Lord. Yeah, the fighter.
Yeah, the Chaos Lord. Yeah, with the shield.
Yeah, who's also like stupidly cheap. He's like 200 points or something stupid. As a fighter, he's completely worthless, by the way. He doesn't do anything.
Right.
You just literally stick him into stuff and let him bounce mortal wounds on an incredibly low number. Right? So
Yep. It's like he's made for fighting Witch Elves. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. He's just a hilarious sacrifice pawn that everybody will look at because he looks real scary. He's a big chaos guy on a monster. It feels like I should pay attention to this guy, right? But of course,
sure.
And you can use him. He still moves fast and can get around and accomplish things. But in fact, he's just there to be a suicide pawn, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I think in general, people don't utilize the mortal slaves to darkness elements of the chaos faction enough. That's my. I don't even have a particular list here. I just think, because I think you can use them across 20 different lists to high value.
Sure.
Right? And by the way, if we do get a Dark Oath book, then all the better. Whatever that looks like, it could only improve their status.
Right. Yep.
The Slanesh book was also going to mark them up, because I think actually the Slanesh slaves are really interesting, because unlike the other ones, they don't have any real overlapping abilities. Yep. What I mean by that is, like, the Slanesh different lords that pass around abilities and stuff are all different.
Yeah.
They're actually unique. And so if, once the Slanesh book comes and we get that full Slanesh support, that could get really interesting really fast. Especially when you take like Slanesh Knights and combine them with like a Chaos Sorcerer Lord and the shenanigans that can ensue there, right?
Yeah.
Just with like a pretty basic buff spell. So yeah, I'll be excited to see what happens there. What's your next pick? Hot take.
So I'm gonna go super weird on this one.
Okay.
Let me. So I'm gonna go with.
I thought it'd be funny if you're being super weird was just you going to the screen for like the next 5 minutes.
Nope, that'd be super odd. I actually think that a Stormcast Eternals list. Okay,
sure.
But the weird part here is that I'm not actually gonna go any of the normal Storm hosts. Or even
Are you going
generic.
Astral Templars?
I am going Astral Templars. Yep. I'm going Astral Templars.
Because I was going to mention this one too. Because I think Astral Templars.
I get this one.
You got it. Yeah, okay.
So I had another list that I had put together that I was thinking about for Acon that was Astral Templars. Because it baked into the Astral Templar lineup is two like ridiculously solid things. The first of those is that there's an army-wide +1 to hit against monsters in a meta that is rife with monsters.
Sure.
We have a meta that has like triple zombie dragons, triple terrorgeists. A meta that is like that has Mortarks and all of these key pieces that are monsters. And giving a generic +1 to hit on the army, especially in an army that you could have like a battery of Celestar Ballistas for like a quarter of your points, have like 4 of those in a Lord Ordinator. that are hitting on 3s on the rapid fire version.
Right.
Is really good. Talk about sniping some monsters. You would murderize that stuff. And if it was just a generic +1 hit against monsters in a monster meta, like that wouldn't carry it. But the fact that built into the army is a 6-inch Vanguard move for the whole army, that's really good. That's really good, folks. Because realistically, you can just advance like a huge sequitur block up, like a 12-inch line of sequiturs onto an objective that's not far off the line, to be basically threatening the objective, to needing to be shifted before the game begins. So
yep. No, and I mean, as has been pointed out, the if you had an Azeros anywhere near the enemy, then that's 3s rerolling 1s, right?
Oh yeah. Not
to
my
mention
list.
That
my list has that Azeros in there.
Of course it does, because the Azeros is like, ever since they made the change to where the Azeros' reroll 1s is both on shooting and melee, I don't know how that guy isn't in every list ever where he can show up. Like, I mean, this
order,
generically, across all order armies. Yes, like all order armies that make attacks, I don't understand how you don't have a Knight Azeros in them almost, right? Like, unless you're already rerolling 1s because you're like,
unless you're witches
or something.
Yeah. Like, exactly.
Yeah, where you already have that built in. It's insane.
He's 100 points for a highly mobile, 100 points for a highly mobile unit that buffs shooting and ranged near him. And, oh, by the way, can drop a D6 mortal wounds against 1/4 of the armies you face. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, who's also fast and on like a 3-up save and a flyer, so he ignores dumb things like woods. And yeah, and. Yes. and he'll just be a chaff piece later on when you don't need him anymore. Right? Like, it's ridiculous. He's unbelievably good for his points. Yeah, right. I agree. Get him in now before he becomes 120 or 140 next year. So that's what I say. Because he is undercosted.
Yeah, so the secret is the Astral Templars. I think there's real gas in the Astral Templar list.
Yeah, I agree. No, it's so funny. I was going to say, I had the same pick. And that I agree that Vanguard move is solid as all get out. Like, I think any kind of like pre-game move shenanigans like that right now, to me, is so highly valuable.
Yep.
It's a very difficult, like it has a very, being able to extend your board presence like that, especially in new scenarios that have an 18-inch no man's land, right? Just puts you in so much more contention right from the gate.
And heaven forbid, by the way, that you're actually running like a low drop list that can go first.
Sure, where you could alpha bunker stuff up.
Yeah, like where you could truly like run a block of 20 sequiturs up and just like take control of the middle of the board.
Right.
And by the way, put them on 2-up rerollable, because you can double Castellan buff them. And there's nothing stopping that in the current world we live in.
Sure. So. 2-up rerollable is pretty good, I've heard. Especially with especially with 40 wounds of sequiturs. Like, most armies don't pack enough mortal wounds to deal with that.
Sure.
Most armies. Yeah, it's decent. It's decent as saves go.
Sure.
So I've seen how Archaon interacts with that sort of thing, and it's...
You mean 10 of them?
You shut your dirty face. There was 20 of them on the board, just because Archaon was only dealing with 10 of them. That's less than relevant, Tom.
No, there were only 10 of them on the board, because I had 5 Judicators and 5 Liberators for my other battle line.
Anyway, the point is that Archaon needs more rend. Okay, so that's not what we're talking about. No, that's a good pick. I dig that pick a lot. I am going to pick, somebody asked if they've done Ironjawz yet a little while back, and the answer is no. And here's my Ironjawz pick. So here we go. I want to see somebody... What's that?
No pigs. That's the hot take.
That's the hot take. No, I want to see somebody use the Ard Fist.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I mentioned earlier that I hate Alpha Strike armies because you bet your whole army. Correct. The reason I hate Alpha Strike armies is because you generally bet your whole army, right, on an Alpha Strike.
Yep.
And it's very easy for Alpha Strikes to fail. Okay. But what if I told you that you could have an entire like 50 or 60 Ard Boys or whatever who charge the enemy turn 1 in Alpha Strike fashion on a sort of Mega Wah, and then just, do as much damage as they can, okay? And
die.
And then die, and then all just walk right back on the board from your side of the board. And, what if I told you that you could pretty easily give these guys like plus, 5 to charge and charge on like 3d6 plus 5 or something like that. All of this is within the realm of possibility. There are multiple ways to build this list. The core of it is just an Ard Fist with tons of Ard Boys and a Chanter, right?
Yep.
And, when these guys get up to like +2, +3, +4, +5 attacks, whatever, something nuts, they are going to do some serious damage. And even though they are on 32s, which is a negative, it's not the great world of 25s, as we all know. But they can flow around a lot of stuff. Like, that's just a lot of bodies. And unless they have
very long charges, not just a lot of bodies,
charges.
On very long, like a ton of dice with bonuses.
Right. And so that's very funny. Someone in the comments said all they hear about is Ard Fist. You live in a different world than me, buddy. I'm not seeing these Ard Fists, but I'm glad to hear that somebody in your area is checking this out. But I've played around with it a little, and it's scary as all get out. And by the way, I'm not saying you have to be limited to one Chanter, because somebody just mentioned that. I'm just saying, like, that's the min requirement. Yeah. Build from here, season to taste. There are lots of options. But I'm fascinated. Like, this is a thing I want to see more people play. And if they're talking about it on the forum, good. I'm glad to hear it. Somebody put this thing on the table more. I want to see people start bringing this stuff and playing it. I think it's a good list. I think you have to play it a particular way, though, which is use Suicide Bomb it and then bring them and then walk them back on. And I think that there is still very much a use for pigs. I think you have to build the list correctly, because you can't bring your whole army to the backboard edge and then expect to actually win an objective-based game. Right? So, like, you do need midfield control still, and I think you do that, I think you do that through very careful pig usage / how the rest of your army moves, right?
Sure. I can buy that.
And pigs are cheap. Pigs is cheap. That's the lesson for today. Yeah. All right. What else you got? There are certainly some other ones out there.
Yeah,
that are things I'd like to see more of.
In toto. I think there's still gas in the Fireslayer engine.
Well, do you want to talk about Dwarden in general? We kind of did the elf roundup. There's two in particular that I definitely want to make sure we touch on. One is the Dwarden roundup, and the other one is Darkling Covens.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, in whatever way you want.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll say is this: the dwarves have a really solid lineup. I still believe this. Like a post in GHB, 2018, I took a list to a local event and was able to walk away with the W. But I took a force in 2017 that was all Dwarden mixed order, and I did very well with it at Acon in the GT and also the 1,000-point Vanguard. What I would say is that I think mixed order dwarves, Dwarden, have the utility, not the full utility, but quite a bit of the utility of the Skaven combo.
Yep.
The exception being they are missing the magic element, which is a big element, admittedly. And But I think that can be adjusted for by sprinkling in like 1 or 2 small units.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's a huge element, to be honest, because I'm always dubious on the Magic strategy at this point. I'm not sure that, like, with the primacy of Nagash in the meta,
Yep.
I'm not sure that the Magic strategy isn't just have some necessary Magic but don't overinvest. Because unless you're playing Nagash, it's very easy to run up against Nagash and then have a lot of your plan shut down. Now, I understand the nature of 30-inch ranges and stuff, but he's still a Hulk that can move in and really Magic control a pretty big section of the board.
And they have the highest, I mean, I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure they have the highest occurrence in the meta right now.
Who, Legions?
Legions. Like if you go looked at LLV's stats, you're gonna see Legions of Nagash there.
Yes, certainly. I mean, if you look at their win percentage versus their percentage of occurrence, it would be highly likely that in any 5-game tourney where you were being relatively successful, there would be a fairly high percentage chance that you fought Legions at some point, right?
Yeah.
Like when you do the comparison of the fact that they're about an eighth of the meta, combined with the fact that they have a quite winning track record, usually occurring in the 3 to 5 area of wins. It generally means that if you're on a winning track, that you're going to end up staring at them at some point.
By game 3, you will probably be staring them down.
Sure.
I mean,
statistically highly likely, not assured. Nothing's assured. You know, matchups are weird, man. Things happen, but for the most part, you are highly likely to run into them.
So, so the weakness for the dwarves is Magic, and they can largely get around that. By 1 or 2 units, and they actually have something that the meta really needs right now, which is ranged punch. And so I really think that there's gas in that engine. And there's a high likelihood chance that I'm going to be super lazy for Adepticon and just take my dwarves again.
Well, and they have a lot of other strengths too. Like when we mentioned the primacy of the importance of like durable bodies, which is something they have a lot of. You mentioned shooting already. I agree with that. They're very good on power projection. They do have strong magic dispellers. In our little rune dwarf, our little rune lord, who's a +2 dispeller natively, like +2 to dispel, or sorry, unbind. +2 to unbind is like incredibly powerful to just have it on the rip, with no other, like he himself just walks around at that, doing nothing to get that. That's quite potent. I mean, especially if you're up against just other people who are using straight casters, right? He stands quite a high chance of unbinding them quite regularly. If there are annoying, spellcasters, he can move forward relatively protected and surrounded by dwarves and sort of project that range right into their face.
Yep.
Right. And make it very annoying for them to get the magic they need off. So they're largely battle shock immune, often without, not all of the dwarves, but, many flavors of dwarves come in like battle shock immunity without, or I shouldn't say immunity, highly battle shock resistant. How about that? Without, again, much additional effort, right? So they're good at taking a punch and just remaining standing there. I think the dwarves are the dwarven in general across the board. And especially as mixed of some kind of version of like maybe some fire slayers in the right type and sort of a best in breed dwarves, right? Absolutely is a quality army. And by the way, you do still have some movement tricks there. Are they the best? No, but you got a little bit, right? Once they arrive, their little stunty legs don't carry them very far, but it's not zero.
Sure.
It's not the old world where they got to march across the board 3 or 4 inches at a time. So they got that going for them.
That's true. So, that's my vote.
Right on. All right. There was a question of whether or not we talked about bone splitters. No, because I think they still get played enough. Now, I mean, there are certainly probably lists that don't get played enough, but I mean, I think bone splitters are still around a lot. Melee bone splitters, etc. I think being especially powerful for a lot of the reasons we talked about with the Astral Templars. But,
Bless you.
Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't mute this because it's on my phone. So I just tried to get rid of the mic as fast as possible. I am very sorry, everybody. but yeah, you know, I'll be interested to see where Bone Splitters go over the next 6 to 7 months. Like by the time we get a new GHB, I think that watching them and how they develop will be interesting. But I want to talk about Darkling Covens, man. Like we talked about all our high elves. It's only fair we talk about their dark brethren. Now you've mentioned some lists before.
I have.
Obviously, the sorceress on Black Dragon is worthless and should generally be avoided. We can all agree on that.
Yep.
She's junk, yes. It's a shame. She's a cool model, but here we are. But the sorceress on foot plus, let's say, a selection of several of the units, right, within the Darkling Covens, I think have incredible power, right? If we look at something like just straight up, I think Executioners and Blackguard are probably our two hot picks.
Yeah. I mean, Blackguard less so. I think Executioners are hot.
Anything else what else in the Darkling are you a fan of? Like obviously,
I think actually
because you've thought more about this list than I have.
Yeah, I mean, so you can be functionally one drop or really close to it with this list, and it's a list where you get the battalion really does a lot of work here. Let me see if I have the list on my phone real quick. The battalion's going to do a ton of work, and like you can fill it out with. So you're going to get some shooting with some dark shards mixed in. You can still get a block of like 30 Blackguard, 30 Executioners, and a bunch of sorcerers, like one on Black Dragon probably, and then 4 sorcerers on foot. You have a ton of magic. You can sacrifice, and you still have points for cogs and amidst all of that, by the way. So like you can help solve part of the movement problem for foot troops with cogs, so that everybody's like moving 8 basically.
Yep, everybody's basically like somewhere between infantry and cav, right?
Yep, and then you get +4 or +2 to cast on 4 different characters because you can sacrifice a bunch of the dark shards without them losing effectiveness. Because they count as a single thing, and so you get some screens if you need them or whatever. However you need to divide up your troops, you're able to do that. And again, it's a 1-drop army. They have battle shock immunity baked in because of some of their command abilities, the ability to stab some of their own people, and just overall, it is a very competitive list, is what I would say.
Yeah, it feels to me like it's probably, and people have been playing this. Like this does show up.
Yeah.
Now I haven't seen the lists, but it does show up on there. And I would, I would really love to look at the lists that are getting played. Like I wonder if there's not some ally choices that could be done here that are helpful. I wonder if there's not, what's the answer that fully unlocks them. I don't know what that is. And by the way, I don't know if that also means maybe we need to see if their ally list shifts at all or something like that. I mean, they do still have Stormcast, so our old buddy the Azeros can certainly show back up because,
sure,
Stormcast show up and help everybody. But they're, to me, they're one of those ones that, like, I don't think, given their current form, I think they're solid, right? Yeah. But I think you would have to play at like the absolute just top of your game to be, even going 4-1 at a tournament or something like that. But I don't think that necessarily makes them bad. I think they're still a very good list. I think I think they've got a lot of interesting potential. And I would love to see more. A lot of these things are things where I don't have the exact answer. But I think what we're pulling on here are threads where, like, if some of these armies got the attention and experimentation and refinement in play that, like, the ones that are currently the hot stuff in the meta got, people would be figuring out or unlocking them in a different way, right? When you've only got like 1 or 2 people playing them and really trying them, it's easy for them for that person to have a bad break at the tournament or have a bad draw or maybe not have the most optimized list or anything like that. And it's not a slam on anyone, by the way. Like this, one person who's an incredibly fantastic player, it's usually hard for them to to unlock everything unless they're like innovator extraordinaire, which there are a couple of these people in the world, right? I am not one of them. But like a lot of these things I think we've mentioned, they've got a lot of potential, and I would just love to see people push them more to figure out what they actually can do with these things.
Sure.
So yeah, that's my thought on that in general.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Is there any we haven't covered that you wanted to touch on, Tom? Is there anything we've missed? We have made our way, very much around the realms here. We've touched on more or less all the grand alliances. Talked about a lot of different forces. Anybody we haven't touched?
As a brief aside, I think there's a Tzeentch list out there that people haven't discovered.
Just like Tzeentch in general.
I do, and I'm going to stand by that. I think that. So there's a mechanic that I don't think people have really latched onto yet that I think is super broken. In the changeover from GHB 2017 to 2018, the unit cap stuff has been removed.
Okay.
Like the ability to add, like when adding models to a unit, there's no like upper limit on that now.
Okay.
And they fixed this because most of the units say like return slain models, like one slain model or however many slain models to a unit, which means that those models have to have died. So like there's an inherent cap to that.
Sure.
But there are a number of effects out there that just add blanket models to a unit, and most of those types of effects are in Tzeentch. And so like as an example, like the new wording on the battle shock restoration is just those units like on Pink Horse, they do not take battle shock. If you roll one, they do not lose any models, and you add a D6 models to the unit, period.
Right. Sure.
Or the Multitudinous Hordes Battalion, it just says, every hero phase, add a D3 models to the unit. That's it. So, like, all of those units would just simply grow every turn ad nauseum.
Nice.
And every time those horrors die, they die per model into summoning points.
Right.
So, like, all of those new models are simply more summoning points that are being added to your summoning point pool for more horrors. And so Ghoul Patrol is another example of this. Haywo just...
Do you have a way... Is there a way that I'm not thinking of that you can grind off, like, in a careful fashion, one of your own pink horrors out of, like, one or more units every round so you can force trigger, battle shocks?
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is. You're at...
I mean, other than just running an endless spell through your own people.
Which would be like, very effective. Like that would not be hard to do. Because you could just
take a wide-ranging, moving, endless spell and just plow it back and forth through a bunch of your own pink horrors, knowing that you're basically going to lose one or two or something from all the units. And, not any amount to impede their effectiveness and
you have 9 dice that some of them can be ones.
No, I understand. Absolutely. Yeah. I understand with fate dice. I'm just saying, like, even in addition to that, part of the way you'd want to do this, I mean, you're not going to have that many ones, hopefully. Right? In a world of fate dice, you usually have 1 or 2 ones. So the way to do this is to just start forcing that roll every time. Right. And the way to do that is to just sort of like...
Dangerous Train is one way that I can think of. Does Damned? Damned doesn't do that. Yeah, you could sacrifice Damned.
Yeah, because that is D3 mortals to the unit.
Yep, you could do Damned. Although you want to only do one mortal when it happens, if you can. Like, because doing a D3 is risky, because you're only going to gain back a D6, and you're still going to have to roll 1. So, but the key is that, like, those, like, Multitudinous Hordes is 8 units. So it's all of the units, so, like, you have, like, that regeneration is going to be pretty widely distributed. across all of those units. So anyways, I think I say all that to say, I think there's a Tzeentch list out there that people aren't playing with.
Does part of that list that people aren't playing with rely on like, because part of what Tzeentch lacks right now is maybe like solid anvil units. You can gun people up with horrors and stuff, but horrors do still die.
Right.
So is part of that answer having something like, you know, knights or warriors or stuff like that in there? Because as we mentioned earlier, the Tzeentch knights or warriors can tarp it. Is there a mixed list of these two variants that actually then give you like the anvils you need out of the slaves and then just the spells and summoning and fate nonsense out of, you know, all the rest of the demons?
No. Your hammer is already there. It's your newly decreased enlightened.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yep. Yeah, I mean,
yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So you have a couple packs of enlightened as your hammer, and then your anvil being bodies, which you're both going to have and summon, and then also probably like a real anvil unit of either knights or chaos warriors. Yeah, something along those lines.
I like that. Yeah, I haven't thought about it much before you started talking about it. So you know, I have no idea what that list.
And like all of those horrors are okay not being on the front lines,
right? Of course,
because they're all ranged units, and the longer you keep them out of combat, the more they're just going to add models to the raw units, and they're just simply going to grow
until eventually you've just got bubblegum everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
No, that's good. So I like that.
And by the way, LLV, there was an FAQ on the multitudinous, and it just reduced the number from a D6 D3 to a D3 1, because there was no cap on the unit size now, and so they needed to reduce how many models each unit is simply adding. Because before the pink hordes were just adding a D6 models blanket every turn, and that got reeled back to a D3 models every turn. But it's still a D3 models every turn.
Sure.
So
no, that's solid. So one last one that got asked about in the comments, and I don't know that this is really people aren't playing it, but people asked about Gutbusters, so we should address it. The ogres, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I think this is a list people are playing. Now, obviously, I'm biased because I watch all of Doom stuff, and he plays his fat boys a lot. So in my mind, they get played, but I understand that like if you look across the meta, they're probably not played as much. Right. They are interesting. I think that, as usual, their challenge is going to be more or less the same challenge they've always had, which is bodies, right? Like body count has always been tough for them. That being said, I think Iron Guts are still good. I think regular Ogre Bulls are still amazing, as a matter of fact. Like 12 Ogre Bulls is just a heck of a pile of meat that people are going to be very hard pressed to plow through. That is often well set up to deal with a lot of current things in the meta relatively cheaply. I think there are a lot of good elements in the Gutbusters army. I think that the problem with them, when you compare them to something like to another non-book army, right? Sure. Like if you compare them to something like, well, obviously against something like Skaven would be the most stark comparison, right? Is that they don't have the depth of units, right? To do all this stuff we need, like to make a bunch of ranged attacks, to do a bunch of mortal wounds or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I think they are the type of army that is a lot of fun and can be incredibly rewarding to play, but will so easily get outclassed by what they're lacking and don't have an acceptable compensatory bonus. Like Ironjawz will often get outclassed by what you're up against in the raw, but their compensatory bonus is that you can wah 5 times and, like +5 attacks to your whole army tends to solve a lot of problems. Not every problem, but a lot of problems. Your brute boss alone, when he gets like +4 or 5 attacks, will kill entire units, right? Like easily. It's not even a stretch. He'll just paste entire enemy units. But but the ogres don't have any such thing, right? There's no like
Mm-hmm.
thing on overdrive that they can, no button like that they can push. Their bonuses are fairly swingy out of the butcher, you know, stuff like that. So like to me, they're just shy. I think they can
Sure.
be a lot of fun.
Yep.
I think that they're just shy of actually being able to like get there. I think they're
Yep.
a fun army no one's playing. I don't think they're one of the best armies no one's playing. But I think they can put up some decent results. Because they do at the same time, like again, to just to circle back to this to make sure that everybody heard it, they're actually at the same way they're very weak to some armies in the meta, they're actually quite strong to some others, right?
Mm.
Their high damage, low rend attacks are a nightmare for stuff like Nighthaunt,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Where like they waste nothing on rend, right? But like every wound that goes through is just smacking multiple ghosts dead,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So like so there is very good things they're doing out there. But yeah, that's my general feelings on them. All right, that's probably enough, right? I don't think
Yeah.
there's none others I wanted to touch on.
No.
I think that really covered most of them that I wanted to touch on. So, I'm amazed by the diversity we see right now in the lists people are playing, and what excites me, and the reason I wanted to do this show is because I think there's a lot of other really competitive armies out there, even beyond what we see, which is already a big list of like,
Right.
you know, let's call it a dozen fairly competitive forces. Like I'm not going to argue that like legions and daughters or whatever aren't sort of the tip of the iceberg, but they're not that far out in front. Anybody who
Yeah.
thinks they're like way beyond the pale did not play during like the age of like 8th edition elves or 7th edition demons or whatever, right? Where like certain armies were just so far out of whack. I'm not saying those armies don't need adjusted. They probably do. I'm just saying that they're, you know, they're fine. They don't win every tournament. Um, and I'm excited by the fact that there's probably another good 8 to 10 armies under that dozen that I think if people experimented with, pushed on, and with maybe even a little minor tweak or two in either like an FAQ or a points adjustment, could go from like minorly competitive to like super darn competitive.
Mm.
And that's why I wanted to start talking about Order Draconis, right?
Yeah.
Because I think at this point it's sort of proven itself as being a competitive thing on basically 2 units because it got a couple extra artifacts, right?
Yeah.
That's the size of the shift we need, I think, for some of these armies to go into like pretty darn competitive territory.
Mm.
That's a
Mm.
very minor change,
Sure.
right? And that's like super exciting. We're not talking about like, well, you got to rewrite every scroll and you got to change everything. No, I'm saying like I think most of these are like either on the border there or just need like boop, the littlest baby push, a little baby push, and then in they go, right? So that's pretty cool. That's a pretty great world to live in. So there you go. All right. Any other final thoughts, Tom, before we close out?
No. I think we're good.
Right on. All right. Well, happily, this will probably, hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on this faux wood that my computer is set up on right now, will be the last road show of the year. So there you go. Hopefully, we'll be back at home next week, back to our normal setup. And as always, appreciate you watching. We'll see you next Wednesday.